The topic of this video is the body paragraph and something I affectionately refer to as the body paragraph method. It's really just a structure for how the body paragraph ought to flow. As you can see on the left-hand side of this somewhat crude drawing is an acronym that spells the word meet, like I will meet you in the park for lunch, or meet, let's throw a slab of meat on the counter and have lunch. I guess I got eating on the mind here. But anyway, this stands for, as you can see in my little drawing there, M stands for main idea, and your main idea should be articulated in a topic sentence that makes a claim. E stands for evidence, and evidence is just information that's used to help you defend the claim that you make in the topic sentence. And some people would give A for the third letter, which would stand for analysis, but I think E is a little more plain spoken. That's the portion of the paragraph where you're explaining how the evidence supports the topic sentence. And we've already spoken a little bit about tie-ins, but the last sentence of a paragraph is useful to sort of wrap up the point that paragraph makes and tie it in with the thesis in the introduction, so that with each body paragraph, it's very clear that how it fits in layering information so that it builds your argument or your analysis. So let's look at some of the advice below. Number 1 asks that you take a look at that diagram up there and sort of get accustomed to that and writing in that way. This is something that we practice quite a bit in my English 111 course. For English 112, I'd like for you to think about this for a minute. Sometimes I think, or I can speak of my own experience, I remember when I was in a composition class like this one, I found myself wondering, well, where does research or source information belong in a standard body paragraph? And a common place that you'll want to use source material is more than likely going to be in that number 2 section. Just after the topic sentence, you'll probably introduce a source and provide some information from that source, whether you're quoting it or paraphrasing it. And immediately after that, there's going to be a moment, part 3, for you to kind of unpack the information that you have just given the reader. And that's analysis or explanation. You're going to help the reader see how that information helps prove some kind of point that you've made in the very first sentence of the paragraph. So it seems to me that usually early in the body paragraph, that's where you tend to want to use your source information, which isn't to say that you won't be using your source's words or ideas later on in the paragraph. In fact, you might go back to the well and use their words or ideas to help clarify or to help analyze something earlier in the paragraph. But more often than not, to me, it seems that source material tends to fall in that evidence portion of the paragraph. Now, this is just a simple body paragraph. In my English 111 classes, we practice paragraphs that layer evidence. So you might, if you're looking at the diagram, you might have piece of evidence A here, and then explanation here. Then you might not end the paragraph, but follow in with another piece of evidence, and then another explanation for piece of evidence 2. But anyway, let's get back to this thing. Number 2, a paragraph needs a topic sentence that makes an arguable claim, just like the thesis, if you'll remember. This claim should sync with the primary objective stated in the thesis. Word claims carefully to reflect the paper's primary objective. So, your thesis, if you're writing an argument, needs to sound like an argumentative thesis. Likewise, your topic sentences for that paper should also kind of be speaking the language of the primary objective or the purpose of that particular paper. So, for example, let's just say you wrote an argumentative paper that says Kawhi Leonard is the most dominant basketball player in the NBA today. Or maybe you said Kawhi Leonard is a better basketball player than LeBron James. Well, that's argumentative because you have a side that could state or argue on behalf of Kawhi Leonard, or you have a side that could argue on behalf of LeBron James. Your topic sentences would probably make claims that sounded a little something like the thesis. It might sound a little something like this. One area that Kawhi Leonard consistently proves that he is the dominant player in the NBA is with his defense or his defensive skills or something like that. And I'm kind of giving the thesis back to you in short form, and I've added a piece of information, which is this paragraph is going to talk specifically about defense. Number 3, the rest of the paragraph through information, data, analysis, explanations, sometimes research supports the claim. Certainly you should have number 4, one idea per paragraph. Number 5, oftentimes a topic sentence might build on the previous paragraph's topic sentence claim, which it sort of creates a subpoint. Don't be afraid to start a new paragraph if you're giving a new set of information while making a larger point. Here's a little hint. If your paragraph is starting to turn into like a 300-word behemoth, you probably have more than one idea in there, or you have one very complex idea that needs breaking down. So if your paragraph is getting to be about a page long, it's time to start thinking about how you might break that paragraph down. And some writers who are afraid of their enter button write these page long paragraphs. And what they don't know is that really they probably got about 2.5 or 3 ideas in there. And so instead of relegating that paragraph to having just one idea, like number 4 would assert, they've just kind of thrown a lot of stuff at you, and it's really hard for your reader's brain to make sense of that and to sort out that information. That's why we just need that one idea at a time, explain one thing to us well, and then move on to the next piece of information. Number 6, in revision, make note of any seemingly short or overly long paragraphs. Add depth or break down, depending on your assessment. So when you're in that revision stage, after you've handled the introduction and thesis, it's time to look at each body paragraph and look at them separately and say, did I do these things? Did I stay focused on one idea? Or am I repeating myself? Or am I going on and on about something unnecessarily? Where can I cut repetition? There are a lot of things we might find, or weaknesses we could find, when we start trying to take our paragraphs and reassess them one at a time. Number 7, this isn't necessarily specific to body paragraphs, but it's just a good habit of writing. Define any new terms you introduce. Consider what your audience knows and how much you need to sort of clarify or help them understand the word that you're going to use a lot in the paper. Number 8, I find that students, if they write short, sort of underdone paragraphs, the place they really seem to be lacking in is in the number 3 portion, in the explanation or the analysis. So if you're writing short paragraphs, that's probably a good place to begin in your revision. Did I do enough to really explain what I mean here? So number 8, be thorough in your explanation. Again, consider your audience. The claim isn't enough. Think how and why. Help your reader. So if you're going to make the claim that Kawhi Leonard is better than LeBron James, and the topic of that paragraph is that he's a better defender, then you probably want to be descriptive about how Kawhi Leonard plays defense and what are those various skills that he has. Well, He's very good at stealing the ball before the offense can even sort of get a play sort of called up and ready to execute. That might be something that you mention. Or you might talk about his height and leaping ability and his rebounding. So number 9, if your paragraphs tend to read like bulleted lists, it's because you're not transitioning from evidence to explanation. A well-chosen example is preferable to a data dump, and particularly in English 112 in these research papers, I find that the body paragraphs of some students' papers, they just want to throw a lot of data and information at you and expect that to be meaningful. But data isn't really meaningful unless there's some sort of helpful explanation or analysis paired with it to help your reader see, what it is you're trying to show them by providing that information in the first place. So all semester long, that should be your goal at the body paragraph level. Do your best not to just throw information at the reader, but to unpack that information and explain it to them and create a piece of writing that is actually helpful and clarifies something. When you log on to Moodle, you'll notice that I've got a little introduction, and it says in English 112 our mantra is, at every level of the writing or of the paper, research writing is helpful. And I'd like to expound upon that a little more later. But this is one of those areas where it's really up to you to go the extra mile, to be helpful, and make sure you're teaching the reader what you know and by what virtue of what you've read, the research that you've done. That analysis is how you are helping the reader understand or comprehend your content or your discussion. So lastly, number 10, consider the last sentence in the paragraph the tie-in. Make sure it leaves no room for questions and that it puts the final word on that particular point. This sentence ties into the thesis, the primary objective.